Another thing that's been a long time in the coming is GeoDjango, which is the geographical framework basically built on Django. That was also in a branch that merged right before 1.0, and it really extends Django to go into directions that is just amazing. And Justin Braun, we actually had him on our show in a previous episode, was kind of the main man that led that development.
Yeah, I got an opportunity to go to that talk at the conference, and I was just blown away. I mean, I've heard Justin talk about it on our program, like you said. I've looked at some of the docs, but just to actually see it live and him sort of working through it all, it's just amazing. I'm really excited to dig into that, so looking forward to it. Another item that was worked a long time, a lot of work went into it for a long time by somebody who's not here, unfortunately, and that is pluggable file storage. That work was done by Marty Alchin. And yeah. Marty did amazing work on that, and it's so much cleaner. And I had a project recently that I upgraded, and I kind of thought that I would, I ran into a file storage change and kind of thought that I would have problems with that. And I was like, darn, I don't have time for this to figure out, everything he did. And the API was just so simple, and it was easy to switch over, very easy, and it just worked. So I was really happy with that work.
Yeah, I absolutely love that particular refactoring. It really improves the file fields and image fields and whatnot. So another thing that was taking consideration in going towards 1.0, and a lot of bugs got fixed for it, is Jython compatibility. Yeah. Leo Soto basically and Jim Baker, this was a Google Summer of Code project that kind of started trying to get Django to run on Jython and be able to take advantage of the Java world. And earlier today they gave a presentation and they actually demoed Pinax actually running on Jython. So it's really incredible the work that they've put into that and making it so that that both of those work together, and people who work in maybe Java shops can now get Django in their environments. And the last one that we have here, among many other bug fixes and whatnot that went into 1.0, is generic relations in forms and in the admin. One of the things that New Forms admin allowed was this really improved API that allowed us to be able to hook into different areas inside of the admin, and one of those things it allows us to do is actually now have generic relations in the admin, which gives you the ability to create some sort of inline class that you can actually just put on different models that you want to actually have the ability to add maybe images or files or whatnot to just any arbitrary object.
Yeah, so we just want to thank everybody for all their hard work on this. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, this is our special feature edition of the podcast, where sometimes we like to bring people on that are doing interesting stuff with Django. And today we have the opportunity to have two gentlemen from Discuss, Daniel Ha and Andrew Botter. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
So Discuss is a service and tool for web comments and discussions. The Discuss comment system can be plugged into any website, blog, or application. And Discuss makes commenting easier and more interactive while connecting websites and commenters across a lot of different thriving communities. So maybe, in general, can you just tell us a little bit about why you decided to create Discuss?
So we started it back when we were in school. Jason and I over there, we started while we're in our third year at school. We were, honestly just looking for a project to do, and we were kind of tired with the classes we were taking. So Discuss came of that. The first thing and the most consistent thing about it was the name. It was a nonsensical Web 2.0 name that we kind of threw up. It sounded like Discuss, so we thought that we should do something around discussion. And we went to that. We started out doing some forum software, so kind of like almost like Google Groups, but it had a lot to do with forums, and we were kind of connecting the profiles across all these forums. We started applying it to blogs a few months after that, and then the blog stuff started taking off, and we completely dedicated all our resources just to focus on these blogs.
What is the value add that you provide?
So we have a couple different, or two different types of users. So we have the publishers, like the bloggers, small publishers, or even larger sites like newspapers. And they plug into Discuss to get a large community, the big aggregate. But first off, they get a lot of functionality up front. So a lot of management tools and a lot of things that make their websites a little more interesting to comment on. For people who just want to comment, they come on and they're able to track their comments. They have a profile that they have from site to site. It's a lot easier to comment because it recognizes you when you go from one Discuss site to the next.
Yeah, that's nice.
So, yeah.
Have you found people concerned over releasing ownership of their comments to Discuss? I know that I talked to my business partner about your product when I first came across it because it really looks cool, and that was one of the concerns that was brought up.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we did. There were a lot of people, I won't say a lot, but there were some people who have, they run their business off the content ownership. There are some issues the way that we do it through our implementation because it's done through JavaScript, and then that way search engines can't index that content. So our solution is basically our WordPress plugin and plugins that for self-hosted platforms uses our API and it pulls into the HTML itself. And that way it is indexed. We do allow you to back up all your content. For WordPress, it is automatically synced up, so you don't lose that at all.
So how is Discus using Django?
It's completely ran on Django. It, it uses in the back end. And, it's the framework that we started out when we first.
Why did you choose Django?
Oh, why did we choose Django? It was mostly to not use PHP. That was Jason chose it. We were looking for a framework, and we didn't want to use PHP. And Python was, was the language that we were playing with, and we wanted to. I think Django was the first one we were looking at, and it just clicked, and we just kept going with it. The only concern we had was that it wasn't at a stable release. It wasn't at a 1.0. This was like late 06, and we figured it'd happen in a couple months, but it came by.
Yeah, plus several other months, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, I'm wondering, what has been the greatest benefit of using Django, and what are some of your favorite features of Django?
We use almost all aspects of Django. The most powerful things for us are probably the ORM, which saves us from not only writing SQL, but a lot of maintenance work with database access and worrying about security. And I love the URL dispatcher, and I'm a fan of the template system. Some people say that the template system in Django is not powerful enough, but I like that more disciplined approach that Django pushes you into.
Yeah, makes sense.
So do you guys find any limitations with Django?
Well, the question is limitations with respect to what other option? I mean, we could do everything ourselves, meaning write our own framework or do everything with SQL. And relative to that approach, I think Django's obviously a tremendous benefit, and there's really no comparison. But there are also times when you do want to work around the framework because you're trying to do something that the framework doesn't provide yet. And right now for us, that's mostly in the ORM because that's one of the most complex parts of any web application. And there's always going to be more stuff you want to do with a database, whereas something like templating is pretty straightforward.
Makes sense. So I know you guys generate a tremendous amount of traffic and probably have quite a bit of load. So I'm curious about your caching strategy, what it's like. How much of it is custom and how much of it is just sort of out-of-the-box Django?
We pretty much use the Django low-level caching API. We don't use template fragment caching. We don't use the automatic page caching. And we don't have any intermediate caches like SQUID. David Kramer was talking about that yesterday. What we do cache is data that takes a long time to generate. Like we have some widgets you can embed on your blog that show some stats like your top commenters and stuff like that that can take some time to generate, and we cache those. And we also cache the rendered thread of comments that's going to appear on your website. And we had a blog post about Mint Cache, which was also mentioned the other day. This is an idea we got from another post on Django snippets. which we changed in some ways that we think make it easier to use, and we posted that back to Django snippets. It's gotten a pretty positive response.
Great. So, Daniel, I understand you guys are a Y Combinator company, and maybe for those who don't know what Y Combinator is, you could describe what that means and also what that experience has been like for you.
Yeah, so Y Combinator is, there's a lot of blog posts and articles about it, and they call it like a startup boot camp, but what it is basically like a seed stage firm. They give you some money and they run you through a bunch of like presentations and kind of give you a really quick tour of how to start a service and figure out exactly how users would want to use it and make a business from it. So it was a good experience. It was 3 months that we went out to Boston for it, and we learned a lot. Discuss was completely rewritten when we started Y Combinator. We started Discuss a few months prior, and we kind of changed our focus a little bit. Rewrote the code, and throughout the experience, we got a lot of feedback and from all the people doing it, and some closed tests, and we were able to iterate off that. So it was good.
What is the greatest lesson that you learned from Y Combinator?
Just release early and iterate.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of the main thing. For something like web applications, it's easier to do something like that. There's not a lot of capital, not a lot of investment that needs to be in it to get it started. So we're able to just push out something and see if people respond to it. If not, we can change directions really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good.
I'm kind of curious. So I haven't actually used Discuss. So how much work is involved in sort of integrating this into your site? Is it really simple, or is it something that's a little bit more involved?
We hope it's pretty simple. We support all the basic platforms, all the different blog platforms and CMSs out there. The big ones would being like Blogger, WordPress, Tumblr, Typepad, and the level of difficulty depends on which platform you choose. But for the most part, either you drop in some code or you install a plugin. So it should be pretty simple. Moving forward, we've had people build out, custom plugins and integrations using our API, and that's something that we would like to say. We want to be able to support people building out for their own custom applications.
Yeah, because everyone here has built their own blogging engine, so hopefully you support all of theirs as well.
Exactly.
And you may not be able to talk about this, but I'll ask anyway, and you can just let me know. But what's your architecture like for Discuss? I mean, what sort of database are you using? I understand you have a pretty big server farm, that sort of thing. I mean, I don't know how much you can say. So,
I think Andrew would be a better person to talk about this. Yeah.
So the requests come into an Nginx reverse proxy, which passes them along to one of our web servers, and the web servers talk to our Postgres database, and we use Sloaney to replicate that database for backup and soon to use it as a read slave for those widgets that I was just talking about. And that's about it. It's a pretty straightforward architecture.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know if you guys had anything. That's all we had. I didn't know if you had anything else that you wanted to kind of mention or talk about.
No, not really. Like the biggest thing we're doing right now, we're trying to get toward 1.0. So we're still not quite there yet, but I think we're inching there a lot closer now. Still looking for a lot of people working on big Django projects to help us out on that. So we are definitely hiring if anyone wants to.
Another thing we're focusing on right now is building out our API. And I'm talking about this because there's a lot of developers out there, obviously, and I'm hoping that some people will take a look at it. Some people have already started some cool projects with it, and it's got pretty much all the fundamentals right now, and we hope you can build something cool. And another aspect of Django that we haven't started using yet, but that we want to start looking at really soon, is the internationalization framework. In fact, we have already started looking into it. We want to start using it soon. And I'm really looking forward to using it because it looks really cool.
Great. Well, thanks again. We really appreciate you guys coming on. Let's give them a hand. Well, this is our community catch-up segment this week, and this is a segment where we like to look at some different things that are going on in the community. If you notice, we completely skipped tracking trunk. We're pleased to say that we have no tracking trunk items. There is probably some stuff to talk about between Sunday and Thursday, I guess, but we don't want to focus on that. We want to focus on going forward. So we really appreciate all the things that people are doing in the Django community. The first item, though, actually is a very inspirational blog post by Adrian Holavati. Adrian wrote a blog post titled, "Django Still Amazing Me After All These Years." And I thought it's a short piece, but it was really inspirational just to kind of read through and hear Adrian talk about all the different things that are going on in the community and the types of things that that he's been impressed with. And so I just really enjoyed reading it, and I encourage you to check it out.
Yeah, I really like this article because it's always nice to see when you create something on your own and then you realize that other people are using it. Even just up to one person is using your little creation, and as far long as Django has come, it's pretty amazing to see that grow and whatnot. And he even mentioned things like there's a conference which is going to be this upcoming week, and we do a weekly podcast every week about Django. So right. I thought it was a really good article. So well written, Adrian. So the next item that we have actually is something that is a very recent development that happened just yesterday. Is Cloud27. Cloud27 is a social network, a social networking site that's built on Pinax, and we actually have James Tauber up here with us to kind of talk a little bit more about Pinax really quick, and maybe Cloud27 how it uses it.
Sure. So Pinax really came out of a desire to make it easier to write reusable apps in Django, to make them work nicely together. In order to do that and to sort of try piecing together various applications, a bunch of us started to basically build a collection of apps, both new and existing reusable Django apps, sort of centered around this notion of a social network. And the idea always was with Pinax that it would be a platform that you could build a wide variety of different sites, not just social networking sites, but a whole range of sites. But the initial focus was on sort of social features, like making connections between friends, uploading photos and tagging them, blogs, discussions, and so on. And so from pretty early on, to help drive the development of Pinax, we had this site up. But what I found was that there was a lot of confusion between Pinax, the platform, the collection of reusable apps that we were building, and the demo site itself. And so one of the things I wanted to do was more clearly distinguish the site from Pinax, the platform. But secondly, what started to happen was people started to use the demo site as a real social network. People were actually using it as a place to put their bookmarks. They were actually communicating with their friends via it and so on. And I thought, well, even though I had never intended to build a generic social networking site on top of Pinax, I was thinking more about building more niche sites. I thought, well, what if we do just put out a generic social networking site out there and sort of see what happens. And so that sort of became the short-term focus of the Pinax team to get that up and running.
Great.
And we launched yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday during his talk, actually.
So I'm kind of curious, James, what's your plan for Cloud27, and where do you see it like in a couple of years?
Well, unlike a lot of the other side ideas that I have that I hope to finally get back to now that Pinax has gotten to the stage that it is, I really don't have any clear goals for Cloud27. In a way, Cloud27 is the one site that I don't have expectations for. It's kind of the throw it out there and see what happens. I've always been fascinated by the fact that different social networking sites out there have tended to pick up very different demographics. go to a different region of the world, you find a completely different distribution of usage of various social networking sites. You know, there's a lot of talk here, obviously, about things like Facebook and MySpace, but you go to a different country and all of a sudden everyone's just talking about High Five or Bebo or Orkut or Friendster. And the interesting thing is none of those sites went after that particular demographic. They were just building a generic site, and just through, you know, sort of a tipping point, network effects, you get a particular group of people in a particular demographic. And who knows, maybe that'll happen with Cloud 27, that a particular group of people will just happen to use it. At the moment, it's actually a pretty good way for Django developers to work together and communicate and so on, just by virtue of the fact that the vast majority of people that know about the site are of course, Django developers.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. Good luck to you.
My pleasure.
Thanks, James.
So the next item that we want to talk about is Django I18N stats page. This is an incredible site built on the Google App Engine. And it gives you the status of the 47 Django translations and sort of where they are at. And I know that Brian could probably actually talk about this more because he was involved in the push to 1.0. But I think it proved to be an extremely useful tool in figuring out where things were at, as I understand it.
Yeah, I personally didn't do much with the translation stuff, but it was all a lot of fun just kind of watching the graphs get more coverage and all that kind of stuff. And basically, this site was actually built off of a script that was written by Ramiro Morales, and which is really kind of neat to see this community kind of get together and just make these really cool tools for everybody to use.
That's very cool.
So the next item that we have is a blog post by Patrick Beeson, and it basically goes over how to upgrade the Django comments to 1.0. One of the things that actually happened right before 1.0 was a Google Summer of Code project that also helped refactor the comments app to get that up to date with new forms as well. And this article I found this article really good because it goes in depth about all the things that you need to do to get yourself up to date with the new comments app.
Yeah, it's great because we talked about actually last week when we had James Bennett on about that there was another post about comments, but it wasn't. It was just basically how to implement certain functionality. But we had kind of talked a little bit about how, you know, needing that sort of step-by-step, here's the process you go through. And the page that was on the Django site kind of showed a SQL migration script, but it didn't seem like everything was there. And so this is kind of a nice walkthrough. I really enjoyed looking at it. Is Patrick in the audience at all? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
So the next item we have is actually a new podcast for Django by Bashir Kayali. And he began a Django Tips podcast. We're actually friends with Bashir. I should say friends. We know him online. Mm-hmm. And it's great to see other people in the community getting started with podcasts. And I haven't actually had a chance to listen to this one because we've been here and busy. He just released it. But I imagine it'll just feature a lot of Django tips. Imagine that, right? So we wish him luck on this.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to just checking out what he's done.
Yeah, it's really.
So the next item that we have actually is a article that was written for us by our good friend and helper Kevin, and we were featured in the Linux Pro, the Linux Pro magazine, and we just wanted to just kind of give credit to that and the excellent work that Kevin did writing this story and trying to get our attention for like 2 minutes just to ask questions while we were trying to do so many things before DjangoCon.
It's so funny because Kevin's been a great help with the show, and we mention that every week, but really is. And he sent me a whole list of questions. I said, Kevin, I don't have time to type all this out. Can I just like record it in audio and send it to you? And I did. I just this big rambling dump during my lunch hour, and Kevin just pulled it all apart and created this article. It was just really encouraging, and it was great to see, and so we really appreciate it.
Yep.
So the next item is something very interesting, actually. It has nothing to do with Django specifically, I don't think, but maybe you can talk more about that. But it's called Django Clever CSS. I guess it does have to do with Django, but it's an approach to CSS markup that kind of uses indentation to support inheritance of the cascading tags and the style sheets.
Yeah, I actually right before doing this, I was actually looking this over, kind of get an idea, and I thought it was pretty neat. Basically, they have this specific syntax that you can use that helps create your CSS files using indentation like Python does. And it looks like it has some Django hooks that you can actually hook it into your installed apps, and you get a template tag that allows you to kind of hook things in with this particular syntax and whatnot, and get the files out there.
And I guess what it does is, if I understand it correctly, in the actual request, it does the processing and writes that out. Is that what happens, or?
Actually, I'm not sure about that specific, but
yeah, something like that. Anyway.
You do this.
Oh, okay.
I don't even know about the next one.
The last item that we want to talk about this week is a blog post that's really interesting and funny by somebody that's here, and it's called Amusing Tidbits from DjangoCon 2008. And so I actually don't have her name, but I'll just read a couple of the tidbits. Here's one that says, "The loose seats at Building 40 at the Googleplex are heated. I have never met a warm toilet seat before. The lap of luxury indeed." So, and then another one. "Speaking of male-heavy tech conferences, the upside is that there's plenty of eye candy if you prefer the gents. Slightly geeky eye candy, but delightful nonetheless." So, it's a pretty funny series of tidbits of just kind of random quotes that she has on there, and I definitely encourage you to read it. It's a lot of fun. So let's try to do this. So every week we like to feature a tip of the week. As Brian says, it's the tip of the week. So this week is actually a tip that we featured a long, long time ago on the program. We want to feature it again, partly because I actually was doing a search and trying to find out what were some tips that people found really, really useful, not just from our program, but just in general. And Clint Ecker, who's here, he did a blog post back in June, I believe, where he said that one of the tips that he found really, really useful was a post by Rob Hudson called Django and Relativity. And so Rob, are you here? There's Rob. So thank you. Thanks for the write-up. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about what this is. But it's a simple thing, but it's something that if you start using Django for any amount of time, you find that it's really useful. And that is that it's the idea of, I actually have it up here. Move it. It's the idea that you can use os.path to set up a relative, basically the position where your settings.py module is running from. And once you've done that, once you've grabbed that using that os.path.abs path, then you actually have the full path location to where your settings.py module is. And then from there, you can manipulate it and use it to add on. For instance, in this case, it's adding on /templates directory to show where the templates directory is within your Django project. The advantage of doing this is that you can just move this anywhere you want, move it into any other directory or whatever, or on another computer, or send it to somebody, and it'll just work out of the box. So you're not hard coding any paths in your files. So thank you for the tip, Rob, and it's something that everybody should be doing.
Yeah, actually earlier today, when I was helping out with the Jython guys getting this working, apparently this doesn't work on Jim Baker's computer, and it was driving us a little insane, so we ended up just hard coding the path. So there is one case when this doesn't work.
Interesting. I haven't seen that. So that's all we have for the show this week. But what we do want to do, I shouldn't say that's all we have and then say we have one more thing. What we do want to do is open up the floor to some questions from the audience. People might want to ask us about the show, or they might want to offer some feedback about things that we could be doing differently or better, or things that they like or don't like or whatever. or questions about how we produce the podcast, whatever you might have. And we have two enticing things for you. One is that if you ask a question, I lost it. Kevin can hold one up. Why don't you come? We have some This Week in Django T-shirts, and let me see. They look like that. So if you come up and ask a question, we're going to give you one of these. We have about 40 of them, so hopefully we won't have to do that. But we also have female and male T-shirts available, and so we want to make sure we give all those out. I definitely don't want to take them back on the plane with me. So
What do we want to do about?
yeah, and we've got one more item, and that is Practical Django Project's book, written by James Bennett. It's an excellent book. If you don't have it, I don't know how we're going to do this. If you ask the best question, I guess, I don't know how we determine that, but we'll figure something out. We're going to give you the book, but what's even more important about the book is that it's signed by all the core devs that are here, so pretty impressive. All right.
I just wanted to make a comment on the pattern up there. You can shorten that even more by just having os.path.dir name of __ file.
Yeah.
Nice,
point.
thank you.
That's a good point.
Oh, go see Kevin for the shirts.
So I love This Week in Django. It's a fantastic podcast. I have a problem that my commute is now less commutey, so I have less of a chance to listen to it. I was wondering if you guys are going to be publishing more of the content This Week in Django in sort of just sequential blog entries, so we can catch it with the new stuff that you're covering, maybe if we haven't got time to listen to the full podcast.
That sounds like an excellent idea. One of the things that we wanted to do with our new website is to really be able to make the specific content that we do in each part of our show something that's a little bit more easier to catch because of similar situations like that, because we've actually had requests from other people kind of asking that same thing.
Cool, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was just hoping you guys could talk a bit more about the genesis of This Week in Django, why you decided to do it, why you thought that anyone would listen. I mean, obviously you were right, but I'm curious, you know, what led you to get into it?
Yeah, I actually started This Week in Django by myself, and then on the fourth show, Brian joined me. But the plan was always to have other people on the show. But when I started it, there were some blog posts, there were some regular updates being done on the Django weblog by Adrian initially, and people liked that. And then they kind of died off after some time. And then somebody else picked it up, and I apologize, I can't remember who. But oh, it's Clint Ecker, that's right. Clint picked it up, and he started doing these really incredible posts that kind of talked about what happened the week before. But if you do this for any amount of time, you realize it's a ton of work. And we probably spend 14, 16 hours a week on the show between, you know, the pre-preparation, doing the show, and post-production and everything. So when that dropped off, I kind of saw a void. I enjoyed it. And then just audio and talking and whatever is something that's always interested me. I always thought that I would really enjoy a job in radio, but I never really had the opportunity to do that. And so I just started playing around with it, and I don't know, I just decided to do it. And then people said I was crazy when I first started off. They said, "You're actually going to do this every week?" And at this point now, it's kind of just a regular part of the process. But there are times when it's challenging to do it every week. But thank you.
Well, we'll do our best to make sure you have something to talk about every week.
All right, thank you.
Just one more note on the tip of the week.
Yes.
You shouldn't do just import OS, because path is submodule of OS. You should do explicit import os.path. Isn't that right? Some more Pythoners?
Thank you.
Several comments. First, I love the show. You guys track trunks, so I don't have to. I really love the music you guys are using. I never was able to find like, oh, today we use this music, this music, this music. Is there going to be like a list my request is actually some of the back episodes have some really awesome musics. Will there be, at some point, you guys will be releasing, oh, we use this music, that music, something along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, we could put that list together. The music that I chose originally for the program, people said, well, why did you choose this music, certain music? You know, it should have been more of the Django Gypsy Jazz style music. And I agree.
More jingles.
But actually, it was just that it was music that was available through like Soundtrack Pro, GarageBand, or whatever that was royalty free. And I just really didn't want to try to figure out, you know, what can I use, what can I not use, you know, what are the length limits and those sort of things. I didn't want to be violating any copyright. So I just picked some stuff out that sort of worked and have been using that. And then at PyCon, Adrian came up to me and said, hey, you know, it'd be really great is if you know, did some intro music in the style of Django Reinhardt. And so he wrote a piece. I think it's really his own piece, as I understand it. Yeah. And it's awesome. So we were really excited about that. We've been using that for the intro and outros. And we've talked to Adrian a little bit about possibly getting some more music. So it'd be great. But I can definitely put a list together to tell you what it is. But they're also just specifically made for bumpers or whatever. So it's not like there's a whole song there.
Oh, thank you.
So I just wanted to reply to the one comment. There was a discussion on my blog using the Discuss software. It started out as import, or from OS import path, but then the discussion was that it didn't really make a difference. It didn't save any memory, so might as well just import OS.
The reason is because somewhere someone imported OS, and every time you import it, it's just a pointer, so it doesn't matter.
I was actually going to say I don't think import OS even needs to be there, but that's not what I came up to talk about. Actually. No. And anyway, I really like the podcast. Two things. One is video ? You know, video podcasts would be cool. And I'd like to put a vote in for tracking trunk thing being minimized, because that's the one part where, you know, I usually like fast forward to the juicy other bits. So, but other than that, great job.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, one of the things that we do every Sunday night, actually, when we record the podcast, is I typically stream my side of the conversation, but I do have both the whole audio, but in terms of video, you can at least see me do the stupid things I do during the show.
So I do a lot of Django code, but I do a lot of Python code that's not Django. I know that it takes a long time to make the podcast, but it'd be great if you did another one for everything in Python that's not Django. I'd really like a podcast that just told me like all the other Python libraries that are coming up, even if you just took a small segment of that.
And a pony.
And only put like half the time into it, like really half-ass it.
Okay.
And for the interludes, you could use like Monty Python clips and stuff.
Well, actually, it's funny you bring that up. There has been discussion for a long time about that. People have approached me. I actually had Armin, who's part of the Puku project. He actually asked me, "Why don't you do it?" And I said, "Okay, are you interested?" Because I'm not. I'm definitely not qualified to sit there and do a program just about Python and what's going on in Python. And he said no, so I said, well, that's good. So it does take a lot of time, and so at this point, we're not planning that. Another thing that we had talked about is actually having a segment, talking to Doug Hellman. I think it's Doug Hellman. Is he the one that does Python module of the week?
I'm not sure, actually.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, he is? Okay.
So having Doug come on and do a Python module of the week, and I actually talked to Doug about that, but he didn't have time for it either. So but anybody here is welcome to, and I will help them get started if they want to commit to it. So
It could be like Floss Weekly, where it's not weekly at all. It's just like once a month.
Go see Kevin for your shirts, please. I don't want to take these home.
I've got a couple questions. The first one, I'm wondering if you can illuminate how you decide what you talk about in tracking trunk, because lots of things happen there. I'm just wondering how you decide what is worth mentioning.
Yeah, one of one of the first things that we look at is if it's a backwards incompatible change. Things that would be something that a user would immediately notice is either something that they need to change in their code, or things that we feel that is actually something that could help improve their code. Most of the time we try to just shoot for things that would affect users of Django, because there's a lot of things sometimes that go on in Django that are in the deep internals of things that if you knew about only if you wrote that code or you were the one that reported that bug. But for the most part, we try to pick the things that the users would really care about the most.
And also I'll say that over time it has changed. I mean, there was weeks back earlier in the year where there wasn't a single commit all week. So, and there were weeks where it was very light, and so we kind of talked about everything or a lot of stuff. So it's kind of changed. In the last few weeks, we've really pared it down. Though we have been, what somebody said earlier about paring it down, we have been purposeful about saying, let's limit it to like 5 items at the most, because, and try to really just pick the more important items. That said, sometimes some of the more internal things are more interesting, so it's kind of tough, but.
I guess my other question is if there's any plans to update the logo that you have there.
Kevin says yes.
Go get logo.
Yep.
Thanks.
Over here. Question from a now retired podcaster. I'm wondering how you guys manage your time, because a good friend of mine and I had a podcast that's now dead, and 50 minutes was short for us. So it seems like yours hover around 40 some minutes. So I'm wondering if your pre-edits are longer than that, substantially, or not so, or how do you pick?
Well, normally when we record the show, it takes us up to around an hour and a half, 2 hours, just because we...
At a regular pace. We've had shows that's taken 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. Well, no. Oh, yeah, definitely.
So we definitely edit it down. And you get better at judging over time, I think, on sort of what the time's going to work out to be. Originally, I actually wanted the podcast to be just 20 minutes, because if you do like research on podcasts and studies about commutes and people's listening time and everything, that seems to be sort of the optimal number.
It's impossible, though.
But we actually found that people like the longer, sort of more conversational ones. And if Brian and I have another person on the program, there's no way that we can do it in 20 minutes. I mean, it's just impossible because of just the back and forth. Otherwise, it just feels sort of rushed. So now we don't worry about it so much. We've had programs that are close to 2 hours, and we've had, typically, they hover around 45 minutes to an hour. And that's where we like to have them usually, but thank you.
All right, thanks.
All right, I guess I got a question. I just want to say, I guess, I really like your new design for your website, and the fact that Kevin's a part of your team now. I like his call cast, and I like the improvements, but I guess that led me to the question, what do you have in the pipeline? Do you have any ideas for the future of This Week in Django?
Well, the website was definitely one of those things that was in the pipeline, and expanding that to have more and more and more content. And kind of some of the things that Simon asked about. We really want to take certain parts of the show and make those parts more prominent. If people are only wanting to follow certain parts of the show, we want to make that easier for them to do. Kind of getting back to like what Michael was saying earlier, how the weekly updates work. You can kind of follow these specific bits and whatnot. So.
I love your show, and I enjoy the tips of the week. But I'm an optimizer or optimizing freak or geek. I would really like to see more optimizing tips.
Okay.
Or we could present like codelets or complex codes and have people submit their optimizing.
Yeah,
ideas.
that's one of the things. I mean, with the new design, it's going to allow us to. We want to have a place for people to submit links to their posts and stuff like that. We also want people to be able to present those sort of things. I'll tell you the tip of the week, and we've dropped the IRC off, the IRC ad nauseum segment off, not permanently, but it just seems like those are the 2 items each week that are really hard for us to come up with. I mean, sometimes if you're working in Django a lot, you might come across something and you go, oh, that's great, but other times and sometimes it's hard because you might, sometimes people say, oh, that tip was so valuable, and you kind of thought, well, I wasn't even going to say anything about it because it seems so, basic or whatever. But we do have an audience that kind of sort of spreads the gamut, so it's kind of hard in that sense. So we just try to balance it out. But we're definitely welcome. Send us tips, I guess is what I'm saying. We need help.
The comments on the tips are even more valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.